Hello, and welcome to episode 20 of SomerKnits. I am a knitter based in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where I live with my two kids, my husband, my dogs, and our chickens. This is a podcast all about knitting, and I have kind of a limited amount of time today, so I'm going to jump right in as best I can. I don't have a ton of finished objects this time. I work in the tax field, and we just had filing day on Monday. I finally feel like I'm coming up for a breath of fresh air, and I'm just now able to relax and hopefully get back into the flow of my knitting. I've still been knitting in the evenings after my children go to sleep, but it's just it's not been the same. I've been working a ton of overtime. I haven't had as many evenings free. I haven't had my weekends free, so it's just been a lot going on. I also want to mention that it is raining today and very gloomy, and hopefully I've turned enough lights on in the house to counteract that. But I was getting no light from the windows, so I had to move into the dining room, which has more lights in it, to be able to be turned on. So hopefully everything's good. It was looking pretty grainy when I was trying to be in the living room and just not enough light. So we're going to jump right in. I will mention what I'm wearing is my striped sweater. The pattern is by Andrea Mowry of Renee Knits, and I made this last year as part of the DRK March to May knit along. And when we get into works in progress, I will show again what I'm making for this year's DRK March to May knit along. And I've participated every year since the beginning. The first year I did a weekender sweater, last year I did the striped sweater, and this year I am doing the Shifty sweater. But first, my one and only finished object, which you've seen as a half-finished object before, but it is finally done. I have resisted wearing these in order to show them still clean and pretty, and now I'm excited to get them on my feet. These are my So Basic socks. The pattern is by Summerly Designs. She is also currently in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is awesome. And now that I'm past tax day, I've invited her to get together and have a knit date because I haven't had anyone to knit in person with in quite some time, except sometimes my mom. But I'm just really excited to actually see people and talk knitting in person. I love doing the podcast. I love watching podcasts, but there is just something amazing and special about being able to be together in person and share our love for this craft. So my So Basic socks, they are her version. I think it might even be a free pattern, but her version of a sock tutorial. And yes, mine aren't exactly the same. They are definitely sisters, not twins, because of times I wasn't paying attention. So there's a few little errors here and there, but they are basic vanilla socks, and that doesn't bother me at all. The fit is great. I did kind of a midi height. I like this height for wearing. I have some midi shoes that I don't like them to rub against my skin, so I like the socks to stick up just a little bit, and I think these are really pretty socks to do that. The yarn is CrystalSkye's hand-dyed. The colorway is Honeydukes on the foot, and then this yarn is the Violet Valentine, and it was a custom dyed purple for a sweater that I did that I had leftovers. So very thrilled with these, happy to have something finished, and I really do believe these have been sitting finished so long that they're actually listed in my March finished objects, not April. I know it's been a hot minute since I recorded, but very excited. So I've been trying this year to record my finished objects by month so that I could look back, hopefully that wasn't too noisy, and see. I use a planner, a big planner by Erin Condren. Sorry, it's an Erin Condren life planner. And each month, at the beginning of the month, there's kind of, I'll show you a blank one, some planning pages. And in the bottom section, I write all my finished objects for the month, and I number them. And so far this year, because I've been doing mostly garments, my finished objects are only a few each month, and I have nothing in April so far. It is still empty. But in February, I only had 3 finished objects. So I'll cover up my goals. So you can see I just listed out each thing that I finished. And then in March, I'm pretty sure it was the same way. And to make myself feel better, I listed each sock separately. So you can see at the bottom, my goals are not super special in March. You can see that I listed out as I finished each thing. And so in March, it was only the rainy day sweater and then each sock that I finished. And April is still a blank, but we're going to get into works in progress and what I really hope to finish in April. I may only end up with one finished object in April, and I'm going to let myself be okay with that because like I said, I worked a ton of overtime. So they're just, life happens. And also it's spring and the kids are getting busier. And I thought I would knit when we were at my parents' all day for Easter. And I really didn't. I didn't end up knitting until we got back home. So I'm going to take a sip of tea because I feel like I'm talking really fast and I need to take a breath and slow it down real quick. Oh, this cute little mug arrived in the mail recently. It is by Drew Silver Ceramics. I believe she just posts her finished objects on Instagram, and if you're interested in one, then you message her and she'll invoice you and ship it on out. But I really liked the colors. I thought it was really neat the way the glaze is done. And it's a nice little tea size. So that's a fun new acquisition. I know we're not into acquisitions yet, but that's where we are. So for works in progress, hopefully I'm not going to crinkle too much. I've showed it before. This is my Sassy Sacks drawstring bag that I got sometime last year. And I think it was last spring. I'm not sure. I lose track. Anyway, I have my Shifty sweater, and I know I've shown it before. And if you'll remember, I finished like the whole body, I think, was done in March. The back doesn't look quite as nice as the front because you get that jog in the middle of the rounds. And I've got all these ends because, of course, I haven't woven anything in yet. Anyway, so one sleeve is finished and the other sleeve is about half finished. The sleeves are longer than the body, and they have been taking me a little while just because sleeve knitting seems to be so much slower than body knitting. I'm not sure if it's because you're constantly turning the sleeve because of the small circumference or what it is. But I did try it on after I finished the first sleeve to see where the sleeve hit, to see how the cuff felt, to see how the width of the sleeve felt, to see the fit of the body. I'm at pretty much 0 ease across the bust, but I tried to keep the sleeves looser because I don't like really tight sleeves. So I went up a needle size on the sleeves like Andrea Mowry recommends, and I kept them on 16-inch circulars the whole time. I never went down until the cuff to a smaller needle to help me keep my stitches loose because I just really didn't want an overly fitted sleeve. I didn't want to feel squeezed by the sleeve. So I'm very excited to be able to block and wear this. I'm excited about how the colors are lining up. I ended up using 4 contrast colors instead of 3 like the pattern calls for, so I've kind of changed where the changes happen. And I've, for the most part, not wound off any of the Spincycle in order to start a color in a particular place. I have kind of examined the color placement and chosen the inside or the outside of the ball depending on where I was. The only exception is when I went back to color B for the bottom of the sleeve, it was in a section where I was going to end up with nothing but bright yellow at the bottom of the sleeve, no color change at all. So I did wind part of that off. But I think I'm going to go ahead and let the end of this sleeve have some of that yellow in it, but hopefully not be entirely yellow. And I have enough yarn that I'm pretty sure that I can control for that. But very excited about this sweater. I didn't even realize when I started it that you went back to the lighter color at the end of the sleeve, but I kind of like that. It's where it's hard to see. You go back to the lighter color or your first color where the sleeve becomes longer than the body. So your color changes end with your last contrast color here in the sleeve, and then you go back to your first color for the end of the sleeve. And I kind of like that because it brings it back full circle and draws that color back together. But I didn't even realize that when I started because clearly I didn't read through the pattern thoroughly. But I ended up really enjoying that part of the pattern. And when I went back and looked at the photos of other finished objects, I saw how that really brought the color in the neckline back into the sleeve. And I really like the way that looks. So I'm really glad I went with it and followed the directions there. But this is my Shifty. We had the obligatory camera freeze, hopefully the only one for this episode. This will be my entry for the DRK March to May knit along for this year. I might end up with a second entry because there was one day where I just couldn't deal with multiple yarns and didn't want to think, and so I swatched for another Shifty or another striped sweater, and it's the one I've talked about before where I was going to use the stripes pattern from the Chloe. Of course, all my yarn is tangled, so bear with me because I haven't been willing to cut any of it yet in case I was unable to commit. I'm having commitment issues right now. So I guess we're into works in progress now because, oh yeah, we were into that with the, sorry, my brain is still fried. We were into that with the Shifty sweater. Like I said, my yarns are all tangled right this second, and I apologize for that. So I swatched. I have 5 colors of this really lovely hemp merino sport from Fiber for the People that's hand dyed, and it was part of a custom order, and I showed the box when I first got it, but I swatched with it finally, and the washed swatch is like a dream fabric, like so amazing. I can't even tell you how wonderful it feels in the hands. And it was, I mean, I did use a standard wool wash. I think I used my Euclid. Had to sniff it to see what I used. It was that or soak, but I swatched, I washed it, I laid it to dry, and when I picked it up and the drape and the smoothness and the softness, I know it doesn't look super smooth because you can see the little bits of the hemp in it, but I promise you, it is the softest thing ever. It feels a little rougher when you're knitting with it, but once it has been washed and blocked, it's, oh my God, amazing. So I did that. I swatched specifically for the striped sweater pattern, so using that needle size, but following the actual stripe pattern from the Chloe sweater. So just basically based on number of rows, because one's a round yoke and one's a raglan. The Chloe's a raglan and the striped sweater is a round yoke, obviously. You can see from this one. So I have started because I couldn't resist because, you know, why not? But the reason I haven't cut any of my yarns yet and the reason I'm having commitment issues is because when I saw this fabric and I was working on my warm weather make 9, this fabric wants so badly to be riffed, which is kind of a loose cropped flowy t-shirt design. I'll post the details at the bottom of the screen and also down below. But it's so amazing. So I'm torn because I only have one skein of each, which is not enough to make a full t-shirt because they're only like 340 yards per skein, 320 yards per skein. It's not a lot. I mean, it's a sport weight yarn. They're 100-gram skeins, and I have 5 different colors, which is fine for making a striped sweater. But if I want to make a rift t-shirt, I'm either going to need to stripe it or color block it if I want to use the colors I have. So I was also thinking about just placing another order for the hemp merino and doing a rift sweater that way, or powering through my original plan, because I hate to just abandon my original plan. This is what I got these colors for. And they're really bright. And I kind of was starting to question myself, but I really think I'll like the finished object. Anyway, I think I'll have enough leftovers that I can do rift, but I won't stripe it. I will just color block it. And if I'm following the Chloe stripe pattern, and I assigned each color A, B, C, D, E, this color is used the least in the stripes. So I think that I would make it the top of the rift shirt and then color block the bottom based on what's left of each color. So I don't know. Tell me if you think that's a good idea, bad idea, what you think of this color combo. This is Compote, Bougainvillea, and the Real Teal. And then this color is Winter, I believe. And this color that I have not used yet is Fleece. And it is a really neutral, cool leaning taupe. So I was using it to hopefully break up some of the super saturated, super brightness of this. But one reason I haven't cut the yarns is I kind of wanted to get a stripe of each in there and see how I was feeling about the color combo and the stripe pattern. Because the original striped sweater, all the stripes are exactly the same number of rows. Whereas the Chloe pattern, every stripe is a different number of rows. So I would have already switched to the fourth color if I had been following the stripes pattern. But because I'm following the Chloe, the third stripe is thicker, so I'm still in this color for a few more rounds before I switch, I think, to the fleece. I think that happens before switching to winter. So here's hoping that I love it. And yes, I know I totally probably could have finished the sleeves on my Shifty if I hadn't diverted my attention and felt the need to start on the striped sweater. But sometimes you have to follow the joy. And I just fell in love with this fabric so much. This is why swatching is important. And I know I do tiny little swatches and I don't necessarily follow all of the swatching advice. But once I had felt this fabric, some of my plans for the striped sweater changed. I am now thinking about an elbow length sleeve or a 3/4 sleeve and not decreasing, leaving it kind of a loose boxy fit on the sleeve. Because of how I think the fabric is going to block out after I finish the sweater and have a loose floaty feel more than a structured feel. It is 70% merino and 30% hemp, but that 30% hemp is it's giving it the most luxurious drape. And I'm super excited about that. So I just think it's going to have a little bit less structure to it and a little bit more float. I'm making the exact same size. I'm following all my notes from before. I will make it either the same length or slightly shorter and then go shorter and boxier on the sleeves, which will be really nice because it means not having to keep track of decreases on the sleeves. And for me, I think that's part of what makes sleeves take longer because I'm not always paying attention. I end up having to tink back and do the decrease. So I think not having to pay attention decreases, only having to stick consistent with the stripe pattern will make the sleeves go a little faster for me. So we'll see about that. But I am trying to hold off on working on this anymore until after I finish that last sleeve on my Shifty sweater. So that's where I am on the DRK March to May knit along. I do still have another Andrea Mowry pattern on the needles that you have seen before that has not had much or any change. I'm not sure the last time I showed it. And I really don't think it's getting finished for this year's knit along, because it definitely didn't get finished for Easter like we talked about before. I know I cast it on in October, and it's not very far. Here's the right side. This is the Strya Cardigan. I'm still only 4 stripes in, and I have a 5th color, which is the purple. But I discovered an error, a missed increase on one side, and I'm not willing to rip it back. I mean, the gauge on this is like 50 rows to 4 inches. It's on size 2 needles. It's a lot of knitting, and I'm not willing to rip it back to the very beginning. I'm just not. So I am just adding that increase, fudging it in, and hoping that the shaping survives and that I don't end up caring. Luckily, it's only one, and I found it. I should have been counting all along, but this is a lot of stitches to count. I forget how many across it is right now, but it's a lot. So I've already marked where I'm adding it in so that I think it'll flow right, and I'm just going with it, you know. I still think it's going to be a beautiful wearable cardigan. I think by the time I put the button band on, it's not going to be super noticeable, and I'm going to live with it. But I do want to start trying, like, make a goal of a certain number of rows a week or something. Not necessarily a day, because sometimes I only get 1 hour at night to knit after my kids go to bed. But, like, if I can just say I want to get through one section of the cream and one colored stripe a week, even then, I mean, that's growth, that's progress, and any progress is good. So I think that's where I am with the Strya cardigan. So those are my big things on the needles. That's everything. I did cast on another sock because it's nice to have something tiny and portable that fits in my purse. Also, that doesn't take too much thought, like knitting in car line, waiting to pick up my kids from school and stuff, or if I only have time for a couple of rounds. So I'm not very far in, but I cast on the Daily Socks by Summer Lee Designs, and I'm not sure if there's enough light for you to see. In person, you can see the texture really well, but there's kind of a ridge texture pattern. And because of the way the pattern uses some slip stitches and things, it also is a very squishy pattern. It squishes up. I'm doing the child size, and my intention is to try them on my daughter, and if they are too small for her, the colors will be great for my son also. But I kind of thought if I started big, she can always pass them down to him. This is the yarn. I realized that with a texture pattern like this, you could see it better if it was a solid or a tonal. But I had bought this for the kids on sale because they like the colors and they think they're fun. And I figured, why not just go ahead and start? That pattern was one that had looked interesting to me, but easy enough to memorize and not constantly be having to reference the pattern. I find that I like vanilla socks, but I end up taking a long time to finish them because there's not a lot of interest there, but also I need something that's like a 4-row repeat that's easily memorizable and easy to see where you are just by looking at it. Otherwise, it languishes like the Clearly Determined socks, which I showed, I think, in my very first episode last year. And they are still not quite done. I'm on the foot of the second sock, but they have cables down both sides and the cables run opposite directions. And it's just one of those where I don't have the pattern memorized and I do have to pay attention to what I'm doing. So eventually I'll get those finished. Definitely in my spring goals to do that since they've been on the needles for more than a year now. And speaking of my first podcast episode, my first episode was in May of last year. sometime before school got out. So it had to be early to mid-May. And I'll look up the exact date. But I have been planning for a 1-year podcast anniversary episode. I think that is also going to be like my warm weather plans episode. And I want to get out my warm weather yarns, things like cotton merinos and linens and the hemp and everything, and kind of talk through. Originally, I was going to do a make 9, just like I did for the winter. But I think instead of a make 9 of patterns, what I want to do is focus on these are the yarns in my stash that I really want to use. And then take each of those yarns and find the right pattern or use for them and use that as my make 9 and have each yarn turn into an amazing finished object, as opposed to taking these pattern photos and saying, okay, I'm going to make each of these things, and maybe I already had yarn in stash planned for some of those things, and that's fine. But I just think it's kind of interesting to start with the yarn instead of starting with the patterns. And that was kind of how I did the winter make 9. Like I focused on patterns for which I already had the yarn, but I'd already determined the pattern. Some of these yarns, I haven't determined the pattern yet, but I know I have these summer yarns and I want them to be summer garments or summer things, and I'm excited to use them. And so the ones I do have patterns in mind for, I'll talk about that. And the ones I don't, I will totally be open to suggestion for some summer patterns. I know that I want to make Rift because it looks like just such a comfy t-shirt. And I know that I want to make Look at My Holes, and I have the yarn for that already. But totally open to summer knitting suggestions, and I hope to go through those yarns in my 1-year podcast anniversary episode. And also, I have had a number of prizes donated, patterns and things, and a bag. And I need to talk about the bag. So my striped sweater, we're going to get into acquisitions now. And so if that's not your thing, thank you for being here. But if you want to stick with me for just a minute, there are some discount codes and things that you are welcome to. So this super summery, springy, whatever you want to call it, floral bag is by Farmhouse Knit Cafe, and she's on Etsy. And I'd been staring at a similar bag in her shop for quite a while, but I like zip top bags. I know not everybody does, but I like them because I have kids and I tend to throw my bags around, and I've had things fall out of bags. I seem to have lost the stitch markers and needle out of the bottom of this bag that were in there. Hopefully the scissors are still in there, because it just seems like I don't always get it scrunched all the way closed. Sometimes I do, but even then, like, the darning needle can still fall out, and I have a tendency to throw things into my backpack, toss them into the car. Anyway, so she said she had just enough of this fabric left to make me a zippered bag, and the inside fabric, which I had loved the inside fabric on the reversible one that she does still, I think, have on her website. Here, let me move the pattern out of the way. Sorry. So you can see the beautiful floral print inside. I just love bright, happy colors. Anyway, she made me this bag and put a handle on it, and we talked about the specifics. It's got a pocket inside, which I love. I love having a little pocket for like cables and tiny notions and things to not get lost. And I like to keep like a pencil in there if I'm going to have a pattern in my bag and stuff. Anyway, she has offered I think it's a 25% off coupon. I'm going to put it down here, and I'll put it down below as well. And anyone is welcome to use it. I think it's one time per person, but she's also planning a shop update for the first week of May. If you don't see anything you like now, the code should still be active for the shop update. I talked to her yesterday, and So I was very excited to share that with you. I paid for that bag. That was not gifted. I bought it. I just really like it. And if you've seen the snow day print bag that I have from the winter, that's also one of hers. It's also a zip top bag. She's going to have both zip and drawstring in the shop update. She also has the yarn cozies. I think I have one in with my Shifty sweater. Yeah. I have the one I got in the winter that was candies. But I like these because if you put your yarn ball in them, if you're using a center pole ball, if you're one of those people that like throws your knitting in a bag and takes stuff everywhere, some yarns have a tendency to get kind of messy on the outside of the ball, not just come unraveled, but the more they rub against things, like they can start to fuzz up. This will totally prevent that and keep the ball from unwinding on you. So I actually had the gray from my Shifty sweater in one of those to keep it from tangling up on the outside. And I love those. I probably need to get more of them. But anyway, that discount code is good for everybody. She's really nice. If you don't see what you want, message her. She's great with custom orders. I didn't ask if the coupon would work on custom orders. She just said once per person, so it might. And there's no harm in asking. So if you do get a bag from her and you love it, I'd love to hear from you. Just, pop a comment in or whatever. Other acquisitions. So I do not remember what day I filmed last. I know it's been like a long time. So I have my Southern Skeins boxes. I say boxes plural because in March, because it was my birthday, I treated myself to both the sock and the not sock box. And what I can't remember is if I've already showed you the not sock box, which was actually technically the end of February box. And then I got the sock box later. But this is Napa DK, and I have 2 skeins of this at 245 yards a skein. And it came with a bar of handmade soap and a button or a pin, I guess, that says pour me a skein, and it is a wine glass with a skein of yarn in it, which is really cute. There is a wine bottle stitch marker. I believe, since Napa is the name of the yarn and everything seems to be wine related, that it was a wine theme in February. So it's a sparkly wine bottle charm, which I think is, or Progress Keeper stitch marker, whatever you want to call it. And then there is a lavender Euclid sample. Werther's Originals, which I adore. I love Werther's. And a bag of chamomile tea. So those were the goodies, and this was the project bag that came with those yarns. And so I have not decided at all what to make with that, but I do love the yarn. It's blues and greens and so much prettiness. But what I really loved, what I'm super excited about, was the sock box. I opened it up and I was just like, oh, I love it. So it's like not quite variegated, not quite speckled, lots of splashes of color. It's called Garden Party. So the main skein is 400 yards and the mini skein, which is called Reflecting Pool, is 80 yards. And it's like a really deep navy in that. So I actually have 2 because I had ordered the deluxe box. So I have 2 of this, which means that I have 800 and 160. So this could be like collar and cuffs maybe, depending. I know it's not a ton of yardage. Or just a bottom hem even. I don't know. So fingering weight yarn. Got to decide what to make with it, but I really do think I want to make a garment with it. I'm just not sure exactly what. but I love it. I love the bright speckles. I love the theme garden party. The bag that came with it is bright teacups with little hearts on them, which I think is super cute. The stitch marker that came in this month's box, or in the sock box for March, was a teapot. If I can get it out of the bag ever. It was a cute little teapot. And it came with Jolly Ranchers. Yum. Another bag of chamomile tea. Another little Eucalyptus sample. And Happy Hands white tea and ginger paraben-free handcrafted hand cream for hands that craft from the Happy Hands store. So it's just a little sample size of hand cream. So that was the deluxe sock box for March. And it did come with a suggested pattern with like a download code. So I have not looked at the suggested pattern yet. And I have not looked at the suggested pattern for the not sock box either. I love getting the free patterns, but I don't always end up using the suggested patterns. A lot of times I just end up doing my own thing. But don't forget that I have a referral code for Southern Skeins if you want to try one of her subscription boxes. My referral code will give you a discount, and my boxes are not free. I pay for my boxes every month. But if you use my referral code, I will get a small percentage back. It's not a lot. It's not going to buy my boxes, but it is a little something. So I do want to be honest about that. But the discount code actually gets you a nice discount if you want to try her subscription boxes. So highly recommend. Her boxes are actually, on the more affordable side of subscription boxes, and the shipping is free if you're in the US. So I really like that about her things. I believe the sock box ships on or about the 15th of the month, and the not sock box ships at the end of the month. I think I have that right. So check it out. And if you end up trying it and like it or have thoughts or feedback, feel free to message me or leave a comment or something. I'd be excited to hear about that. So I think that's everything. I feel like I've been talking really fast, but maybe it's just that I didn't have as much to cover because of not having as much knitting time. I've definitely, other than my subscription boxes, not been in any yarn stores, refrained from shopping. I did order a yarn advent, and now the name escapes me, but it was one that was bright themed, like really bright. I didn't want to end up with one that was more neutrals or earthy or something, so I was really looking for something with a bright theme. So I have ordered one, and I'm very excited about that. Hopefully I can refrain from ordering another one. I do love a good advent though. But I think that is everything. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate each and every one of you who watches. A like and a subscribe really help. They help boost the visibility of the videos on YouTube. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment. I would love to hear what you're working on these days, or the thing you want to cast on the most, like what your number one next knitting plan is. I really enjoy reading all of the comments. It really does make my day. I've said a lot recently, and I'm sorry for that, but I'm just so glad to have gotten the time to podcast this week. I tried really hard to make time last week, and just with all the overtime I was working, it didn't happen, and it felt like the episode wouldn't have come out well anyway. It would have ended up being rushed and incoherent. It just felt like waiting for this week and slowing down a little bit and taking that deep breath after filing day was really important. And now I can get back into creative mode and enjoy this time. And I feel like podcasting is part of creative mode for me because I get to share what I'm thinking about what I'm working on and not just the conversation you have with non-knitters. Oh, did you make that? And you can say yes, but they don't want to hear like why you chose the yarn you did, what needle size you used, how you felt about the difference between your swatch and your finished object. Like, and maybe it's not that they don't want to hear about it, but it's not something that they would understand or appreciate, maybe is the right word. But it's just talking about the hows and whys of what we do in this craft is almost as important sometimes as the doing of it. That shared connection on how we do what we do. And I know when I watch podcasts, I really enjoy learning from what the other people have done and why they've made the choices they did and how they felt about the unblocked versus blocked fabrics and things. And I've made some yarn notes and stuff based on other podcasters' experiences. And maybe I've tried yarns that I wouldn't have otherwise. Like I tried woolly knit because of Crayabea. And, I got some cones and I ended up loving it and made that wonderful no frills sweater, partly on her recommendation as well. It had been in my queue before I started watching her, but I had never gotten around to it. I had watched other podcasts and people had enjoyed the pattern, but at least one person called it a labor of love because they said there wasn't enough interest in the pattern to hold their attention, whereas I find stockinette very soothing, so I like to have something going that has a lot of just knitting in it. Probably why I haven't finished my elf mail, which I really should, but because I enjoy being able to just knit round and round, and I think that that's one reason I wanted to go ahead and cast on the striped sweater, my second striped sweater, because counting stripes is still just knitting stockinette in the round. Like this is stockinette in the round, even though there's all the visual interest of the stripes, it's still just stockinette in the round. And when I'm tired, or just feeling even emotionally drained, not just necessarily physically drained, but emotionally drained, that stockinette in the round just is very soothing. And some people find knitting textures soothing. So, but for me, I like to have something going where I don't have to think too much about it and my hands can just do what they do. And so for me, that's knitting stockinette in the round, and I really enjoy that. So I like to have a project on the needles that is that, but I've also found that if I do, it can pull my attention away from a textured pattern because it's just so soothing. So I resisted for a while casting on the stripes. And I'm going to make myself finish the sleeve of that Shifty before I go on to any more of that striped sweater, because I know the body of that is just going to move. The other thing I'm thinking about is when I did this striped sweater, I knit the sleeves simultaneously with the body because I was using all random skeins of yarn of different lengths. Some of it was scrap, and I wasn't 100% certain how much yardage I had of some of it. So after each stripe, once I split for sleeves, so after this one, I would knit the body stripe and then each sleeve stripe, and then go back and knit a body stripe and a sleeve stripe. And so that meant when I got to the bottom, I was done. There was no sleeve island. There was And I've done that where I've put the body on hold, knit the sleeves, and gone back and finished the body. But this is the only one I think where I knit everything simultaneously. And I think I have enough cords now of for my interchangeable needles, which are knit picks, that I can use a 15-inch cord on each sleeve. If I'm not going to decrease, I shouldn't have to change to magic loop. And just leave a cord on the body, and I can just move the needle tips around, which is, I think, if I remember correctly how I did this one, I might have been using a fixed for each sleeve and just putting the sleeve stitches on a cord each time I went to the other sleeve. I don't recollect. And then leaving the body on one set of needles. But I will probably go up a needle size for the sleeves again, like I've done for other things, because I do think that that really helps. I think she's right about people tightening up at a smaller circumference. So I'll use one set of tips for the sleeves. I'll use my short tips, and then regular for the body. And so I think that's the plan. But I'm just chatty babbling now. I do want to get this edited before I have to dash out the door for my to-do list. The thing with being done with tax season and finally ready to get back to life is that life has kind of piled up on me. Life being the laundry and the dishes and cleaning up after Easter because there's plastic eggs and Easter grass all over the place. Luckily, my husband helps keep up with the dishes and the kids and everything. So like, it's not horrible, but there are definitely a number of baskets of laundry in my house that are not folded. They're clean. The kids have clean clothes. Trust me, I'm not sending them to school in rags. They have clean clothes. They're just not folded. They're in laundry baskets. And I'd like to get back on top of all that so I feel less pressure from those things as I see them around the house. Every time I look at a full laundry basket, I feel like this intense pressure, like that's a thing that needs doing. And sometimes that can take away from my relaxation of my creative pastimes, like knitting and things. So I just want to kind of get back on an even keel and accomplish those things. Do some more meal planning. My dog is making noise. Get some grocery shopping done today and stuff. So just trying to get back on track. So I'm going to go. The endings are always so awkward for me, but thank you for being here. I really appreciate you spending some time with me today.